You know, Alex, I was looking at that old porch railing I built back when I still thought a tape measure was a suggestion rather than a rule of law. It's got a lean to it that makes the whole house look like it's trying to avoid a conversation.
I've seen that railing, Tiger. It's not just a lean, it's a structural shrug. I always wondered, did you actually measure that, or did you just eyeball it from the cab of your truck?
I measured it once with a wooden ruler that had probably swelled 2 inches in the humidity. But that's the thing about fabrication. The welding is the glamorous part, the part everyone wants to post on the internet, but the layout is where the soul of the project lives or dies. If your skeleton is crooked, no amount of pretty beadwork is going to save the body.
It's the measure twice, cut once mantra, right? But for metalworkers, it feels like there's a whole lot more grind 3 times to make it fit going on.
Exactly. Today, I want to really peel back the curtain on fabrication layout and fitting. Because if you can't get two pieces of metal to shake hands properly before you pull the trigger on that torch, you're just making expensive scrap.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. When you've got a pile of raw stock and a drawing, or in your case, a sketch on a greasy pizza box, where do you actually begin the layout?
First thing, you got to treat your layout tools like they're surgical instruments. I see guys using a Sharpie that's been chewed on by a dog to mark a precision cut. That felt tip line is 1/8 of an inch wide. If you're cutting to the left of the line, the right of the line, or down the middle, you've already got 3 different dimensions.
So, the fat marker syndrome. What's the professional's weapon of choice then?
A carbide scribe or a very sharp soapstone. I lean towards the scribe because it carves a path that doesn't vanish when you accidentally sneeze. And when you're laying out things like hole centers or intersections, you've got to use a center punch. If you don't give that drill bit a little dimple to sit in, it's going to go wandering off like a distracted toddler the second it touches the metal.
I've noticed you spend a weird amount of time cleaning the metal before you even mark it. Is that just a tiger quirk? Or is there a reason?
It's not just me being fastidious. Mill scale, that dark, crusty skin on hot rolled steel, will lie to you. It'll make your scribe skip, and it'll definitely mess with your weld penetration later. I like to hit my layout areas with a quick pass of a flap disc. It's like clearing the whiteboard before you start a math problem. You want to see the steel, not its luggage.
Okay, so we've got our lines, we've cut the pieces, now we get to the fitting part. This is where I see most people get frustrated. Things don't square up, or there's a gap big enough to throw a cat through.
Gaps are the enemy of a happy welder. Now, if you're doing a heavy plate butt joint, you actually want a little gap, a root opening, for penetration. But in general fabrication, like a table frame, you want those joints tighter than a new pair of boots. If you have a massive gap and you try to bridge it with weld, you're just dumping heat into the part.
And heat means, what, warping?
Worse, movement. It's like the metal's alive. You weld one side of a corner, and as that bead cools, it shrinks. It acts like a little winch, pulling your perfectly square frame into a trapezoid while your back is turned.
So how do you fight the shrinkage monster?
Tack welding. A lot of beginners want to lay down a 6-inch bead right out of the gate. They want to see the spark. But the secret to a straight project is a series of tiny strategic tacks. You're just whispering to the metal, stay here for a second.
Is there a specific pattern, or do you just tack wherever you feel the spirit move you?
You've got to be clinical about it. If I'm doing a box frame, I'll tack the outside corners first. Don't even think about the inside yet. Check for square, maybe give it a little nudge with a dead blow hammer. Metal is surprisingly forgiving if you only have 2 tacks holding it. If you fully welded it, your only tool for correction is a cutting torch and a lot of regret.
You mentioned joint preparation in your notes. That sounds like something I do before a physical therapy appointment. What does that mean for a piece of angle iron?
It's the difference between a weld that sits on top, like a piece of chewed gum, and a weld that actually becomes part of the material. For anything thicker than, say, 1/8 inch, you need to bevel the edges. Create a little V for the weld metal to live in. If you just butt 2 flat faces together, you're only welding the skin. It's like gluing 2 books together by their covers. The pages don't care.
I've seen you do stitch welding on some of those thin sheet metal projects. Why not just one long continuous seam?
Strength versus stress, Alex. If I'm welding a long seam on a thin fender or a cabinet, a continuous bead will turn that flat sheet into a potato chip. Stitch welding, welding maybe an inch here, skipping 2 inches, welding an inch there, distributes the heat. It keeps the heat affected zone, or HAZ, from getting too cozy in one spot.
The has. I've heard you grumble about that. That's the rainbow-colored area around the weld, right?
Yeah, and while it looks pretty, It's actually a zone where the metal's properties have changed. It can get brittle. In fabrication, we're always trying to manage that footprint. It's why we use things like copper heat sinks or just patience, something a lot of us run out of when it's 90 degrees in the shop.
Let's talk about fit up for a second. We've all been there. You cut your pieces, you go to put them together, and one piece is just a 16th of an inch too long. Do you trim it or do you make it work?
Well, if you're a make it work kind of guy, you'll spend 3 hours grinding down a weld that didn't need to be there. I've learned the hard way that a 16th of an inch at the base of a 4-foot pillar becomes 2 inches of leaning tower of Pisa by the time you reach the top. If it's not right in the fit up, it's not going to be right in the finish.
So what's your go-to for when things aren't lining up?
Clamps. More clamps than you think you need. I have a collection of C clamps and F clamps that would make a hardware store jealous. A good fabricator is basically just a professional clumper. You're forcing the metal to obey your layout lines. Sometimes you have to use a wedge or a strong back, a thick piece of scrap you weld on temporarily to pull a plate flat, and then you cut it off later.
That sounds like a lot of extra work.
It's the tuition I was talking about. Wait, no, I didn't say that. It's the price of entry. Making it easy on yourself later by being a drill sergeant about the fit up now.
You have this thing on your list, plug welding. What on earth is that? It sounds like something you do to a leaky pipe.
It's actually a brilliant way to join 2 sheets of metal when you can't get to the edges. Imagine you're putting a stiffener plate on the back of a large flat panel. You drill a hole in the top plate, and then you weld through that hole onto the bottom plate, filling the hole back up. It's like a metal rivet made of fire.
Oh, like spot welding, but for people who don't have a giant industrial spot welder?
Precisely. It's very common in auto body work, or when you want a clean look without a bunch of visible beads on the edges. If you grind it flat, it's invisible. It's the ninja of the fabrication world. Now, look at these two. Most people think a weld is a weld, but the geometry matters. A fillet weld, that's your classic inside corner L shape, is the workhorse. But it's also a giant magnet for warping. If you weld a fillet on one side of a T-joint, that upright piece is going to tilt toward the weld every single time.
So how do you keep it at 90 degrees? Do you weld the other side immediately?
You can preset it. You actually tilt the piece a few degrees away from the weld, knowing that the cooling metal will pull it right into the perfect 90. It's like aiming a rifle in a crosswind. You have to account for the force you can't see.
You make it sound like we need a degree in fluid dynamics just to build a workbench.
It's more like being a shepherd for atoms. You're just trying to guide them where they need to go without them trampling each other.
We've talked a lot about the technical side, the scribes, the tacks, the heat management, but for someone sitting in their garage right now, looking at a pile of metal and feeling a little intimidated, what's the real takeaway here?
I think the biggest mistake I made for years was thinking that the welder was the tool that made the project. It's not. The welder is just the glue. The real fabrication happens when you're standing there with your square and your scribe, thinking 3 steps ahead.
So don't rush the quiet part?
Exactly. Don't be in such a hurry to see sparks that you skip the foundation. If you take the time to get your pieces square, your gaps tight, and your tacks placed with intention, the welding part becomes a victory lap rather than a rescue mission.
A rescue mission. I think I've been on a few of those, usually involving a grinder and a very frustrated expression.
We all have. I've spent more time erasing metal with an abrasive disc than I care to admit. But that's how the lessons stick. You remember the one that went crooked much longer than the 10 that stayed straight.
Well, I'm feeling a lot more confident about my next project. I might actually buy a scribe instead of using my house keys to mark my lines.
Progress. Your house keys will thank you, and your projects will finally stop looking like they're trying to run away from the floor.
Thanks for the deep dive, Tiger. This was actually surprisingly useful.
Don't sound so shocked. Now let's go see if we can get that porch railing of mine to stand up straight, or if we just need to build a leaning porch to match.